tech and politics. Like I can't think of two more male dominated, frankly, like potentially and very practically toxic places for women to work. Mm-hmm. We've dealt with a ton of bullshit. And when we opened this company, we had a lot of conversations about how we wanted to leave that at the door and build a place that we felt like we wanted to work.
This is the Job Stories Podcast, how people find work that matters.
We'll go ahead and get started. If you don't mind, just introduce yourself. What are you doing now? What's your job now?
Yeah. Hey, guys. I am Mary Mellor, and I'm the co-founder of VODIUM, which is a Nashville-based tech startup. We have a product. It's actually the world's first virtual teleprompter for presenting on Zoom or presenting virtually. And so co-founded the company with my best friend, Camille. We're super proud to be building in Tennessee. We just celebrated our 2-year birthday of VODIUM, and I'm managing about 1 million things as founders do, but really focused on growing our partnerships and managing our customers, developing our product to be best in class, and then doing all the boring legal stuff. I never went to law school. It was one path I almost pursued at one point, but that's part of my role at VODIUM as well.
That's funny. Just a startup, but like a startup like we have as well here in Nashville. Like sometimes I get involved in doing things like that. They're like, "Are you seriously asking me to like do a contract right now?" So it's kind of funny to you say that.
I know. I have to say, my lawyers would kill me. I have very good lawyers who review everything, but I'm in charge of getting all the contracts out, and we just structured all of our equity, which was really interesting and complicated. But it's actually, I find it pretty fun. Nice. So that's the nerd in me.
So y'all are 2 years old. So y'all started during COVID.
We did. Yeah. So it's actually a crazy story. So I guess I can dive into that. We opened the company on April 17th, 2020. So about a month into the pandemic. I was living in LA with Camille, my co-founder, and mid-March, right, when everything started to shut down, I got the call from my parents in Memphis, Tennessee, that they had to lay off all of their employees from our family catering and barbecue business. At the time, my dad was also the president of the Memphis Restaurant Association and like on the Tennessee Hospitality Board, and was literally like going on the news every night to like talk about all the restaurants that were shutting down, what the city and state were doing to save the hospitality industry. And it was crazy. I was, running my own consulting business in LA, and had just moved out there like 9 months before, and loved it. But I felt this huge call to come home. And so I packed up my car and on my 29th birthday, drove home to Memphis to live with my parents, and help them kind of like steer the ship, right? And just be there to support them. And so, it was crazy times, right? I'm sure we could talk forever about everyone's pandemic stories, but I was in lockdown with my parents, running my consulting business, and Camille called with this crazy idea. She was doing a remote Zoom video shoot on a political race in Maine. And she goes, "There's no teleprompter that sits on top of Zoom or Teams or WebEx or whatever you're using so that people can seamlessly read a script direct to camera." And I thought, there has to be something like that. Let me do a market analysis for you, see if we can find anything. And she goes, "You can do it, but it doesn't exist. And we need to build this." Wow. And at the time I'm like, "Cami, come on. Like, I've got a company. I'm helping my family business right now. You're working 65 hours a week on these political races." But, I did my homework, and 24 hours later, I called her and said, "I'm in." And we opened the company a week later. We just really activated our networks, found a developer who was willing to build a beta product and website for us. And in 4 months, we had a beta product to market in August. And suddenly we had members of Congress, executives of huge organizations, people all around the world buying our product, which was wild. Then, from there, we've grown the company and just celebrated 2 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, to say the world's first product is amazing. So
it's a blessing and a curse. I have to say, it's funny when I started it, one of our now advisors said, "I never want to be in the business of selling something people don't know they need." So we're definitely creating a category, right? Like most people don't think, "Hey, I need a teleprompter," right? There's news anchors, politicians, anyone making TV appearances. But what's been cool is seeing other, competitors enter the marketplace as people have realized they need tools to look great on camera. And so we're really carving out the niche for ourselves, but also for the industry really.
Yeah, that's cool. It's like, you don't know that you need this, but you do. And we're going to tell you
But you
why.
really do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you had your own consulting firm too. So I'll preface this, but we do IT recruiting. So we deal with a lot of candidates, but then also there's a really cool entrepreneurial aspect to this podcast as far as our audience goes. And you mentioned you had your own consultancy firm too. So, and then jumped into this. So you've got some entrepreneurial background. Kind of, what is your background really?
Yeah, I do. It's a really interesting story. So I'm a fifth generation entrepreneur at this point.
Cool.
My parents have all started small businesses. My grandparents were all entrepreneurs. My great grandparents, like it's my aunts and uncles. It's just totally in my blood, but I didn't go that route. I went to college out West. I love to ski and hike. So I went to the University of Utah. Had a really fun time there. I actually studied Mandarin Chinese, political science, and economics in college.
Whoa.
I worked on political campaigns. I worked as a reporter for one of the major Utah newspapers, and actually had a job offer when I graduated to come be a staff reporter at the Deseret News. But I was really passionate about Chinese and thought I wanted to kind of go the State Department route. So I packed up my bags at age 22 and bought a one-way plane ticket to Taipei, Taiwan, which is the country and island off the coast of China, and without a job, and just landed in Taipei with like 4 years of college Mandarin skills, which weren't that great at the time, and started looking for a teaching job and found one. I taught kindergarten for 10 months in Taiwan when I graduated. It's an amazing experience. My Chinese was awesome at the time. That's awesome. Met a lot of cool people, ate a lot of great food, loved the Taiwanese culture, and then decided it was time to move back to the States. And so I moved to DC. In the midst of all of this, I mentioned earlier, I took the LSAT when I was in Taiwan and didn't do really well. And I love Sarah Blakely, is one of my favorite, female entrepreneurs. And I really love her for a lot of reasons, but also she also took and failed the LSAT and is really open about that. And at the time it was super kind of devastating because I was like, I need to either go to the State Department or be a lawyer. And like, those are the two tracks, but didn't end up doing either. And so I got a job at a big company called CEB. That was my first, big professional job back in the States when I landed in Washington, DC. And ironically, my first job with them was producing 300 webinars a year for all of their speakers.
Wow.
And little did I know, about a decade later, I would create a product for people speaking on webinars, right? So I do that for about a year and a half. And then I get this really cool opportunity called The Garage. So CEB was a publicly traded, about $1 billion company with 5,000 global employees. And they pulled 7 of us off of our day jobs, stuck us in an old server room in DC. I was one of 2 women. I was the only American on the team, and told us to go basically ideate on an idea that the chief human resources officer had, which was an app, and then an idea of our own. And so this was like my first entrepreneurial experience, right, within a big company. But it was amazing. I spent 40 days and nights literally like living and breathing product development with this team. And some of them have become still my best friends today. And I'm one of the colleagues that I was working with at the time is now like one of our MBA fellows at VODIUM. So it's just really cool. But we built, launched, pitched an app prototype to the company. It was funded and launched. And so after that, I really got the bug for product and for building things. And it was just an amazing experience at age 24 to be able to do that. But they rolled us all back onto our day jobs. And so I was like, what am I going to do next? And I got the opportunity to go work for a female entrepreneur in DC who had a PR agency, and she was an absolute powerhouse. And so I worked for her for about 10 months. Being her executive assistant. So both my co-founder and I are both executive assistants. And we always joke that was like probably the most formative job we had, because you have to do everything, like anything asked of you. You have to wear a million hats. It's actually not unlike being an entrepreneur. And so I worked for that firm for 10 months. I was really grueling. I was working 80 hours a week at one point, kind of burnt out, and then got an opportunity to actually go back to CEB, but in a product marketing role. And so for the next 5 years, I worked in product marketing and tech in DC, launching $1 million products, naming things, pricing things, working with sales teams to really sell technologies. And then I decided I was kind of done with DC and was ready to follow my California dream. And so I decided to quit my job. I was working at EverFi, this amazing ed tech firm in DC. Had the full support of my bosses and moved out to California in 2019. My roommate, Camille, at the time, now my co-founder, decided to go with me just for an adventure. And so we moved out to California, and I have like all the best contacts in tech in LA and start interviewing. And I'm like, this should be really easy. Like, I'm a pretty seasoned product marketer at this point. Like, the job market's strong. And I fall flat on my face, y'all. Like, I don't know if you've had this, but it was a period, 2 months of just failure, like closed door after closed door after closed door. You know, made it to final round at Amazon, got rejected, which was really a bummer for me at the time. Now I know it would be a terrible cultural fit there. Was, you know, final round at another tech startup, and they had a hiring freeze, like got so many no's. And at the time I was doing a little bit of consulting for EverFi, my company back in DC, just to kind of like pay my rent. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, it was 2 months. I couldn't find a job. I was just kind of at an impasse. And one of my best friends flew in from DC and said, you have to come with me to this Palm Springs weekend. There are a lot of cool people who are going to be there. And I'm like, okay. And at the time I'm like very depressed, actually. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think maybe I threw away this great life in DC. I've failed in LA. And so I go that weekend and I meet a lot of great people. And one of the people I met was Seth Odell, who was at the time the chief marketing officer at National University in San Diego. And about a week after that trip, Seth calls me and goes, hey, Mellor, like, have you gotten a job yet? And I'm like, no, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm really at a loss. And he goes, great, I've got a project for you. Open up a consulting firm and come manage this $50 million relaunch of the university for me. And that was it. And I suddenly had a company, and it was called Mellor Consulting. And then my DC work picked up more. Other friends started throwing me business, and I was a one-woman consulting shop until last December, when we raised our seed round for VODIUM, and I closed it down. So that was really long-winded, but that's my background.
No, I love it. I mean, just to add to that thought of that season where you're just getting rejected from jobs, is like, dang, have I messed up? Like, this is, you know, like moving to LA, like, it's beautiful. Like, that's kind of our story. That's why we started this, because we do have a really cool opportunity to help people that are a little down and out trying to find jobs. We actually do. We have this sweet spot of where we can help them, like, get it. So that's kind of our story as well, is that Matthew actually was in teaching and then got into tech. So
no way.
I thought I'd let him get into that, because you talked about teaching too.
I failed the LSAT, gone months without job, so I feel you.
Oh my God, Matthew, like, we need to be best friends. Yes. It's so funny.
And what's really funny is we make fun of him all the time, so this isn't new on the podcast necessarily, but he was teaching 5th grade math, which, like, she was teaching Chinese, and you know what I'm saying? So it was like, they probably felt like he was because he wasn't very good at math growing up, right?
Oh, no.
So,
I only know that 2 + 2 was 4 in about 6th grade.
Literally.
So. Like,
that's hilarious.
But
you know, those seasons when you like, you keep hitting closed doors are so hard. But, you know, I always like think of that period now so fondly, right? Like, for a while I had PTSD about it for sure, because I had to call my dad for money. Like, I was 28 at the time. I was like, I should be like more settled in my career than this, but it was so humbling. I mean, I really at one point felt like, okay, like, this is rock bottom. Like, I can't do this on my own. And so my family and friends and network, like, really just kind of lifted me up and carried me through that. And, you know, now I'm in the place where, you know, when I have friends or get in touch with people who are going through kind of major transitions or like what they feel like are crises, I feel like I can really share that experience, because it is humbling, but it's really gives you a lot of grit to walk through those times.
That's a good word. And maybe we dig into that a little bit for a second, because I am interested, like, had you not learned some of those real hard lessons, there might not be some skill sets you have as a leader now with your own company that you can now implement. So do you kind of relate, like, are there some things that you look back on your journey and you're like, okay, I think I can be a better leader now, having gone through some of those things?
100%. Right. I think the first is humility and knowing that, like, you can be the most successful person at whatever you're doing, right? You can be at the top of your game. You can be a co-founder of a company. Like, you can't do it alone. Right. And that's the cool thing for us right now, is we're getting to hire a team and they're amazing. And we're hiring these just incredible humans who are so smart and so talented at what they do and are so much better than me or, Cami and our respective strengths at what they're good at. And so that's, I think, really cool to bring, we're getting to build a team and just have more people around us to do things better than we've done it over the last 2 years, just bootstrapping. I think also like failing that season for me really gave me a lot of like, screw it, like try it, right? Like once you've failed so hard or you feel like you failed and you've hit that bottom, you're really not afraid to try things. And if it doesn't work, fine, like you'll think of something else. And so I think like very practically and the season we're in VODIUM and for the last 2 years, like we've tried a lot of stuff and not been afraid to fail, right? Like, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else.
Yeah.
And then just, I think kindness, right? Like I had so many people show me so much kindness through that season and throughout my life, right? And it's a personal value of mine, right? It sounds so cheesy, but like the golden rule is real. I try to walk it every day, but like really understanding everybody's out here doing their best. And especially opening a company during the global pandemic, like everyone's struggling and everyone's going through it. But I think it's just that much more important to give people the benefit of the doubt and, assume good intent. So
that's wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful.
So let's kind of point it at the company now, at your company. So I'm kind of paraphrasing, and we're back to the first product that's ever hit the marketplace. Yeah. So Nike, when they first came about, they were just for performance. They were just like, how do we get these track stars at the University of Oregon to beat Oregon State? And then they shifted a couple years into, wait, but people want style too. They want to look cool while they're running fast. So like, how have you managed, like, we think this is what VODIUM is, but the customers are saying they need this. And how have you like pivoted that throughout since its inception in March or April of 2020?
Yeah, April of 2020. That's a really good question. And I'm thinking through, how I want to answer that. So when we came up with the first prototype of the product, right? We had to make a lot of assumptions because Camille, my co-founder, knew that she needed this for like a pretty niche use case, right? Which was recording a video two-way, having someone read a script. But what we saw, right, with our TVs on 24/7, the news on, was that, being on virtual with suddenly everyone's virtual, is that everyone was struggling to make eye contact, right? People are looking down at their notes, looking at their second monitor, are frazzled. There wasn't the same level of decorum that you had in person. And so we knew that this would hopefully be useful for people, right? Because we could see people struggling with the problem that we were seeking to solve through VODIUM. And so we launched the app in August, our beta, and talked to every single person who bought it or tried it, right? Like we've probably had between the two of us 1,500 conversations with users about what they like about the product and what they don't. And, we've always prided ourselves in being super customer centric in that. The funny thing is the app itself hasn't really changed that much. We've tweaked some things here and there. It's more transparent now. It retains your text when you close it out, but it's really simple by design. And so in some ways, right, we haven't changed the technology too much, but now that we have funding, right, and that's really the game changer, right, is are you funded? Do you have money to pour into a product roadmap or not? What's cool is all of the ideas that our customers have given us over the last 2 years, we're now plotting out on a roadmap and are about to go build them. And I think that at its core, VODIUM will always be simple, and we really love simplistic design, and I could talk all day about that. But, I think what's exciting is we can add more value through features, but also services, right? Like people want to be better on camera now that we all have accepted the fact that we're going to be hybrid forever, right? This is never, ever going away. And so we're really excited to think about different partnerships and how we can really coach and like walk with people as they try to be the best communicators possible virtually.
I totally get it. You're kind of at the ground level, but You've got funding, so that kind of puts you on top of a little bit of a hill. But as you grow your team and as you start to delegate some task and have people implement new policies, and maybe that'll fail. And how do you keep, because you've had some maybe negative experiences in the corporate world, how do you keep your company as it is now, which I'm sure is the place that you want to work? How do you keep that the place you want to work as it grows?
I love this question, Matthew. I mean, I think this is a challenge for every founder, right?
Yes. I'm asking
so
for
hard.
myself.
Yeah, exactly. I think that I'll say two things. So one, Camille and I both come from backgrounds as female founders that were pretty toxic, right? Tech and politics. Like I can't think of two more male dominated, frankly, like potentially and very practically toxic places for women to work. We've dealt with a ton of bullshit. And when we opened this company, we had a lot of conversations about how we wanted to leave that at the door and build a place that we felt like we wanted to work, right? And not just, we want, VODIUM to be a place where people are happy and open and honest. Like, what do those values actually look like?
Right.
And what are the things we're going to put in place to make sure, everyone feels heard and like this is a good place to work. And so as we're bringing on team members, we're working really diligently to have open lines of communication, right? I think honesty and open communication is kind of like the way we operate and the basis of everything, making sure people feel really empowered in their roles, and not just like, we're the founders, we're going to dictate, here are the ideas, like go do this, right? But like we're hiring people on who are better than us at what we're hiring them for. So we want them to feel ownership. And, as I think we grow, that's going to become a bigger challenge, right? But I think like just being open and honest and talking about those values and making sure everyone feels like they have ownership in that is really important. The other thing is, we've given each employee who's come on equity in the company, so that they feel and they are part owners in VODIUM. And we feel really, really passionate about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious too. I had this thought whenever you were talking about your story and how there was a moment in your career where you learned some skills that wound up coming into fruition 10 years later, like life's so bizarre. But I'm curious on your journey, like, was there, you've had a lot of changes, you've had a lot of twists and turns, and we've asked this question to guests before, but we haven't in a while. It seems applicable to you. Are there some values that you can look back on and be like, this influenced my decision to do take a new job or new career path? Or was it just like, that sounds really exciting, let's go for it? Like, what were do you remember some of the motivators and some of the twists and turns?
Yeah. I've always cared really deeply about my career, right? Even since college, like I sought out the internships that I wanted to. I've always been really applied, student and person and employee. But I think one of the good things I've done, and, I really try to impart this onto the people that I mentor and to my friends, is that I've always optimized for learning and skills, right? And it not title, not always salary. I mean, which to my own financial detriment, probably, right? Yeah. Like I could have gone into sales and like all my sales friends made a ton of money, but instead really optimized for learning and experience. But it's paid off now in that, all of those jobs and twists and turns, from being a teacher to an assistant to going into tech, really prepared me for what I'm doing now. And so, yeah, I think that's it. Like, I think looking for the skills that you want to build and opportunities to go build them is really one way to do it. And it's certainly the way that I've done it. And I'm glad that that's what I optimized for.
And I love too hearing your story. Like you're okay with taking risk. So in our family, so am I. Matthew, maybe not so much, but no, that's kind of how we started eventually. He just kept talking about it. And I was finally like, let's just do it. So that's why I was curious too. Like sometimes you just kind of got to go for it,
Sometimes you have to go for it. Yeah. Camille and I were talking about that last night, right? Like you just got to do it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But it's taking risk. If you have a risk appetite, like taking risks is kind of fun, like it's fun to try new things and to do crazy things and see if they work out, because if they do work out, you know, you look up and 2 years later, you have a company and a product and a patent pending and a team and, you know, customers who love your product. And if we hadn't taken this risk, you know, we obviously wouldn't be here, but it's really cool looking back, and I'm really proud of us, and so cool that you guys are doing it too. I mean, it's just great to talk to other founders who are also living it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And Nashville too, right? Like tell me your experience about building in Nashville. I'm curious. Nashville specifically, right?
Yeah. So we love building in Nashville. We were originally headquartered in Los Angeles, and I actually fully intended to move back to Los Angeles after, you know, I'd spent that time in Memphis kind of helping my family get the family business into a good place. But we raised a pre-seed round, and our, you know, investors and accountants were kind of like, look, like you should look at building outside of California, in Tennessee or Texas or Florida. And, you know, Nashville was obviously the right fit. I grew up here. It's such a cool city. There's so much creativity. And that's one thing I like about, you know, I think Nashville and LA have in common. There's so many cool, creative people across industries in this town. And it makes it a really fun place to meet people, other founders who aren't afraid to try things and do things a little bit differently. So yeah.
It's funny, before we moved here, because my wife's in it, she's in music, but we were meeting with somebody that was on tour from Nashville, but they were in LA, and that's kind of how we met him. And we were saying, hey, we're about to move to Nashville. And the guy just looked at him really, he just goes, the water's warm. That's all he said. Just the water's warm.
Water's warm. I love it.
And now that we've gotten here and kind of doing business here, it's like, it really is though. Like people are so warm here and collaborative, and it's been so cool.
It makes a difference, right? Like when you're in a place that you feel like is supportive and like happy to have you here, and you're happy to be here. It's a great town. We're really, really happy to be here.
That's awesome.
Let me ask an unfair question. So I know that going into it. So you started in the midst of, I would say in 150 years, they'll look back and say, whoa, something happened in 2020. But if you look forward 10 years, 5 years, how will y'all embrace change? Because I'm sure in 5 years, the work environment will look a little bit different than it does today, and definitely a little bit different than it did in March of 2020. So how do you embrace that, and how do you look ahead and know your values and know what you stand for, but also adapt to whatever that change may look like?
Totally. I mean, I think to look ahead, you kind of have to look back, right? So when we started this company in April, launched our product in August, we thought we had about a year, right? We thought everything would go back in person. We kind of had a moonshot to see if the idea would stick and people would buy the product. And I mean, truly, we're like, this was our pandemic project. Camille and I both kept our full-time jobs for the first year. And then that didn't happen, right? Suddenly, the pandemic lasted much longer than anybody expected, but also businesses started to and are starting to shift to either fully remote or hybrid models. And so for us, of course, we know like the future is totally unknown, and the workplace will look different in 5 years, 10 years, even a year from now. But I think we firmly believe that we're really on the precipice of a new way of working and a new hybrid world. And we're really excited, and we like embrace all of the innovation and change that's coming. And we got really lucky that we built a product that has a much longer longevity and the opportunity for it to grow than we previously thought.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I don't know. Your answer was very similar to other CEOs or executives at other companies, and they're like, we get it that the world will change, but we have these distinct values that will carry us through. So I just think that's interesting.
Yeah. You know, my co-founder Camille likes to joke that like, we're not trying to be a unicorn here, right? Like we are not trying to say that we're going to be a multi-billion-dollar company or, you know, transform people's lives. Like we're really here to help people. We built a product that helps people. Our customers tell us every day, like, you save me time. I feel more confident. Public speaking, even on Zoom or Teams, is still my greatest fear. And I feel more comfortable and in control and confident using VODIUM. And like, that's what drives us, right? Like we've built something that's super helpful that everybody needs. I mean, we're selling to both corporations and organizations and, large companies at scale for their employees and their teams and their executives. But also, we're selling to individuals, yoga teachers, preachers, rabbis, teachers, you name it. And everyone is having the same problems and the same fears. And so if we can do something to, help our customers and hopefully help more and more as this grows and virtual and hybrid life becomes more a part of all of our lives, like we feel like we're doing it right and we'll be here.
Yeah, that's really cool. We talk about purpose a lot, like, and making sure your purpose is hyper focused on your purpose. And I call it your why. Like, why do you do what you do, right? And you just mentioned it. Yours is about people. You help people in their workplace. You help make their jobs easier. It's about people. And that's how we feel about ours too. It's like, we're here to help people, take their next step in their career or whatever. So that's really, totally. I love hearing you say that. Because like when your why is sound, it's like, you got it, right? So
yeah, totally. And yeah, I mean, it's so cool what you guys are doing too, right? Like job transitions, like making that next move, figuring out what you want to do in your career. Like we've talked about for the last, half hour, it's some of like the hardest and biggest challenges of life. So kudos to you guys for doing that. And shameless plug, VODIUM's a great tool for virtual interviews, right? We have lots of customers who use it to keep their notes or the stories they want to tell on their interviews right in front of them while they're speaking. So we'll have to send it to you guys after this as well.
I'd love to. I've been thinking that the whole time. We should talk offline. I'm thinking of some folks maybe if I can connect you with it, because y'all are, again, the service is amazing. So we need to connect a little bit further on that.
For sure.
I think that's good on time. We really appreciate you. If you don't mind, I think we're at the point of if people can reach out to you and connect with you, how should they do that?
Yeah, you can visit VODIUM.us, VODIUM, which is like virtual podium. So podium with a V. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, VODIUM_US. We're there, and you can reach out to me personally on LinkedIn. My name's Mary Mellor, the only one. So you'll find me there.
That's awesome. The only one on LinkedIn having a product that's the first ever. This is amazing.
I know.
That's awesome. Thanks, Mary. We appreciate your time. This has been a blast. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. It was a blast. Awesome. Good luck and have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too. Take care.